Okay, so what is the fair share? We heard lots of talk during the elections about fair share. We have a progressive tax system. The higher income earners are believed to have more resources with which to pay taxes, more ability to pay those taxes, more discretionary funds to be able to pay those taxes. So the rich pay more, despite what you hear during the elections. The top 1% of income earners, I think this is a really interesting slide. The break point in 2009, at the bottom left here of the schedule, the break point for the top 1% is at $344,000. So if your tax return showed adjusted gross income over $344,000, you're in the top 1% of all income earners in the country. The top 5%, the break point is at $154,000. So I think in a lot of cases when people see these numbers, they're not quite as high as where they thought that, that magical 1% is. Now, a couple of things to take from this. If we look down where those break points are for the top 1% earners, in 1980 we were at $80,000. It roughly doubled over the next decade to $167,000. Less than doubled, but pretty close to that again over the next decade. And in the last 9 years, we've increased about 10%. So we've certainly seen a decrease in the growth of the income of those top 1% earners. Now, looking at their share of the adjusted gross income as well as their share of the tax, in 2009, the top 1% earned 16.9% of the income for all individual taxpayers. They paid 36.7%. So they're paying roughly double, a little more than double their pro rata share of the tax. If we go down to the top 5% of income earners, we see about 32% of the income was earned by that group, while we had almost 60% of all of the taxes being paid by that top 5%. Now, these are interesting to consider as well because the president has made very clear that he's only going to tax the top 2%. And I'm not sure where the break point for that is. It's not published in these documents from the IRS, but it's certainly somewhere between $155,000 and $344,000 of income. And we also see on this slide that the share of income by that top 1%, if we go back to 1980, the top 1% only had 8.5% of the income. That grew in 2000, it was over 20%, and it's fallen back off a little bit to 2009. So overall, over that whole time frame, that top 1%, there has been a shift of income to that top 1%, and the income in that group has been much higher. There's also been a shift of tax to that group, and it has maintained a very high level. Okay, average tax rates. The discussions of the Buffett secretary paying at a higher rate than Buffett and whatnot, we can see where the actual tax rates are. Now, these aren't the marginal rates. This isn't the published top rate of 35% or 39.6%. This is the total tax paid by the taxpayers divided by the amount of their adjusted gross income. The top 1% in 1980 paid about 34.5%. It's reduced significantly, and it's down to about 24% now. So we are in a period of lower tax rates relative to 1980. And if we look across the bottom here, we see the top 1% pays it at a rate of 24%, and it decreases across each step. The top 5% at 20%, between 5 and 10%, we're at 11.4, 10 to 25 is 8.3. 25 and 50 is 5.6, and the bottom half, the bottom 50% of the taxpayers are paying at a rate of 1.9%. So what's happened, and a lot of this is a result of the so-called Bush tax cuts. Those cuts, and you can clearly see here, we had a progressive tax system, and it lowered it across the board. So we had this decrease in the rates across the board. Everybody did save. Yes, the rich saved more if you look at dollars, not necessarily in percentage, but they saved more in dollars. So we're down here now, and the discussions now have been to do this. So we're taking the question of fair share, again, really comes into, you know, how steep is that curve? I think everybody, most people will agree that there should be a higher level paid at the high end. The question really is just how much. So, is it progressive enough?